The Russian economy is now completely on a war footing. They're dedicating 40% of their state expenditures to the war effort. They've lost 1 million people on the battlefield and over 1 million fleeing the country because they don't want to be conscripted. They have very high inflation, very high interest rates, a labor shortage, a parts shortage. Right now, they're rationing gasoline. So it's not as if these things go without any notice or any cost inside Russia. And I think if we were to try in a concerted way to pile onto that with secondary sanctions, cutting off oil and gas revenue, we could have even more of an impact. So I think Russia's in worse shape than Putin wants it to appear.
Now, the Trump administration has denied backing the idea of using Chinese peacekeepers to monitor a demilitarized zone in Ukraine. There had been reports that President Trump suggested it to European leaders when they met him recently. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has rejected any plans for a buffer zone between Ukraine and Russia as part of a ceasefire deal. We can speak to Kurt Volker, who was President Trump's former special envoy to Ukraine. Kurt, good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be with you.
It's really good to speak to you. Thank you for being with us. This idea of a buffer zone, you can sort of see the logic, you can see the sense in it, but Zelensky said, look, this isn't how warfare works anymore. It's not about leaving a distance of 40 kilometres because drones and things penetrate that remarkably easily. You can see his argument on this too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think what President Zelensky is most afraid of is that the moment you create a buffer zone, then you are really making permanent Russia's occupation of the parts of Ukraine that they currently occupy. And I think what Ukraine is prepared to do, they're prepared to live with occupation for a while, but they want to continuously, legally and legally challenge Russia's occupation. They don't want to just create a buffer zone and then cede the rest of Russia.
Yeah. So where does this leave us? I suppose, Kurt, is the crucial question. We had that flurry of activity a couple of weekends ago, which, definitely bred some optimism, albeit limited and sort of with a decent helping of cynicism and scepticism around it. Perhaps the cynicism and scepticism is winning out at this point.
Well, look, I think what President Trump has successfully done is make settling Russia's war against Ukraine the top of the international agenda. It is on everyone's mind. Everyone is meeting and talking about it. They're trying to figure out, how does this end? What he has not done is put pressure on Vladimir Putin to end it. And so Putin just continues. And in fact, if you look at where we are today in Russia's war, we are no different from where we were before Trump took office. So rather than ending in a day, it's been 8 months, and here we are, Vladimir Putin still making the extravagant demands of Ukrainian withdrawal from their own territory, ceding it all to Russia, and changing the government in Kyiv, permanent neutrality, no military forces there. So we haven't made any movement in getting Russia to drop those demands or getting Russia to agree to a ceasefire. Ukraine is ready, but Putin is still prosecuting the war. And to stop that, he has to feel more pressure. He has to feel it's not worth continuing.
Yeah, and that pressure, I think, is intriguing to consider, because Putin has proved kind of adept, actually, at managing any sort of sanction or cost that is imposed by the West, sort of almost diminishing the influence of Western leverage, I suppose, and with that in mind, arguably playing Donald Trump, has he not?
Well, two different points you're making. First, on adeptly managing a sanctions regime and not really feeling pressure, I think that it's easy to overstate that. The Russian economy is now completely on a war footing. They're dedicating 40% of their state expenditures to the war effort. They've lost 1 million people on the battlefield and over 1 million fleeing the country because they don't want to be conscripted. They have very high inflation, very high interest rates, a labor shortage, a parts shortage. Right now, they're rationing gasoline. So it's not as if these things go without any notice or any cost inside Russia. And I think if we were to try in a concerted way to pile onto that with secondary sanctions, cutting off oil and gas revenue, we could have even more of an impact. So I think Russia's in worse shape than Putin wants it to appear. The second point is whether he's been effective at playing President Trump. And here I think he has, because I understand what President Trump's trying to do. He's trying to get a deal so that you can lift sanctions and get back to the business of making money and using natural resources and oil and gas and minerals and all that. And Putin, what Putin has done is dangle that in front of President Trump and saying, yes, yes, we want to do that too. We're going to do that, but never actually taking any steps to end the war. And for President Trump, obviously, you can't go down that road of lifting sanctions and doing business if they are continuing this war against Ukraine the way they are.
Crucially, Kurt, is there still momentum towards a ceasefire or towards a lasting peace, or has that dissipated?
Well, yeah, I can't say that there was momentum. There was high-level concerted diplomatic activity, but it wasn't connected to anything real on the ground. Continued to fire bombs and missiles and drones and so forth. So it wasn't connecting to Putin and creating any kind of a ceasefire. I think the more likely scenario is that as you get towards the end of this year, the realities facing the Kremlin's budget will kick in even more. And likewise, the realities of their military effort. They do not have unlimited reserves of equipment, of missiles, of drones, of fuel, of ammunition. They have a lot, but the Ukrainians have done a good job of chipping away at the supply lines. So I would think by the end of the year, it may be Putin that is looking for a ceasefire simply to regroup and plan to attack again. But that should be our moment in the West to seize it, strengthen Ukraine, and deter future Russian attacks.
Kurt Volker, it's a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks very much. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. That is Kurt Volker, who was President Trump's former special envoy to Ukraine. So however impatient we may be for peace, perhaps by the end of this year it will be Russia that is coming, asking and demanding a ceasefire in order for some level of relief.
Сначала один раз бабахнуло, потом другое. Это, я не знаю, около 3 часов, наверное. Мы в подъезде сидели. Они как пошли шандарахать. Ну вот и все. Он попугай под мышкой и все.
А можете показати?
Вот.
Ага.
Вот.
Перелякати.
Пока туда не зайдеш, там двері
А у Ради полностью спокойно.
по...